Something big just got leaked for version 6.7, and it might be one of the most important story setups we've seen in a while. This isn't just a random detail either. It directly ties into everything that's been building throughout the Nodcry arc, and it could be setting up what comes next in a major way. According to the leak, the Tsaritsa is calling a meeting. Now on its own, that already sounds important, but what's really getting people talking is the guest list. Who's being invited, who's missing, and what this could mean for the overall direction of the story. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. In this video, we're going to break down exactly what the leak says, give you the full context behind it, and explain why this moment could be way more significant than it first appears. We'll also go over some of the biggest theories and reactions from the community because people are already connecting this to future regions and major plot points. So if you've been following the story closely, or you just want to understand what might be coming next, this is something you don't want to miss. Let's get into it. We just got a very interesting story leak for version 6.7, and this one feels different. It's not just a small detail or a throwaway line. It directly connects to everything that's been building throughout the Nodcry arc, and it might be setting up one of the biggest turning points we've seen in a long time. Alright, with that out of the way, let's talk about the source. This information comes from Misusha, a leaker known for focusing on narrative and story-related spoilers, often shared through Ghenshin leak flow on Telegram. Recently, their track record on story beats has been fairly solid, but as always, this is still unconfirmed information and could change before the official release. That said, even as a leak, the implications here are huge, because if this meeting plays out the way people think it will, it could completely reshape how we look at the next phase of the story. The leak itself is actually pretty straightforward, but the implications behind it are what make it so interesting. According to the information in version 6.7, the Tsaritsa is holding a summit meeting with 3 other Archons. Now, on paper, that already sounds like a massive story moment, but what really stands out is who's involved and who isn't. Columbina is also present at this meeting, and she's treated as an Archon-level participant for the gathering. That detail alone immediately changes how people are interpreting her role in the story. On the other hand, 2 major names are notably missing from the lineup, Zhongli and Nahida, and their absence is just as important as the people who are attending, because it raises questions about what kind of agreement or conflict this meeting is actually about. Now that's the core of the leak. It's simple on the surface, but the context around it is what makes this genuinely exciting. To really understand why this matters, you need to look at where we are in the story right now. Version 6.7 is essentially being positioned as the final chapter of the entire Nodcry arc. This is the point where everything that's been building up is expected to converge. Every faction, every mystery, every setup, it's all leading here, and the transition after this makes it even more important. The game is expected to move directly from version 6.7 into 7.0, with no 6.8 bridge patch in between. That means there's no buffer, no filler transition, just a straight jump into the next major region and story phase. So at that point, 6.7 stops being just another update. It becomes the conclusion of an entire arc, the final setup, the moment that ties Nodcry directly into Snezhnaya, and that's why this summit meeting is such a big deal. A gathering of Archons happening at this exact moment in the story feels less like coincidence and more like a deliberate payoff scene. It's the kind of moment that usually signals major revelations, shifting alliances, or the start of something much larger. Then there's Columbina. She became playable in version 6.3 as a 5-star hydro catalyst, but her involvement in the Nodcry arc has gone far beyond just being a playable character. She's been consistently tied to major story events, and her influence has only grown with each update. So seeing her included in a summit alongside Archons and being treated on that level adds a whole new layer to her character. It suggests she isn't just operating as a harbinger anymore. She might be functioning as something closer to an equal power within this meeting, and that's exactly why this leak has people paying attention. Because if even part of this is true, version 6.7 isn't just the end of an arc, it's the beginning of a much bigger shift in the story moving forward, and her growing influence within Nodcry. Even though she's still officially a harbinger loyal to the Tsaritsa, her role has clearly evolved beyond that, and this is exactly why the leak describes her as being treated like an Archon at the summit. She's not just attending, she's representing Nodcry and its lunar interests at the table, which puts her on a completely different level than before. When you look at it that way, her presence here doesn't feel random at all. It feels intentional, like the story has been slowly building her up to this exact moment. Now, as for which 3 Archons might actually be attending, the community's strongest guesses, based on narrative logic and current story positioning, point toward Raiden Shogun and Mavuika, with Columbina effectively acting as the 4th major figure alongside the Tsaritsa herself. What's just as interesting though is who's missing. Zhongli's absence makes a lot of sense when you think about it. He's stepped away from his role, he prefers to remain neutral, and getting directly involved in active Fatui politics would go completely against the path he's chosen. Nahida's absence also lines up with the story's direction. She's still relatively relatively young compared to the other Archons, and after everything she went through in Sumeru, there's been a consistent theme of others wanting to protect her from both political pressure and the harsher side of inter-Archon conflict. So when you look at both the attendees and the absences together, the lineup starts to feel very deliberate. The meeting itself is almost certainly centered around the Gnosis, the Tsaritsa's long-term plans against Celestia, and the setup for a direct transition into Snezhnaya. This is politics before war storytelling, classic Ghenshin, and it's perfectly timed, especially now that we're about to enter the Tsaritsa's home territory. This kind of summit isn't just for show, it's where decisions get made, alliances are tested, and the direction of the entire world can shift. So if this scene really happens in 6.7, it's likely going to be one of the most important narrative moments leading into 7.0. Now, let's talk about the character situation, because this is where things get really interesting. Based on everything we know right now, version 6.6 is shaping up to be a double new character patch. And this is the key point. If 6.6 already introduces 2 new characters, then 6.7 almost certainly won't follow the same pattern, and that lines up perfectly with current leaks. All reliable sources are saying the same thing. Version 6.7 only has 1 new character, Sandrone, and when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, it actually makes a lot of sense. Version 6.7 isn't a normal patch, it's the final setup before Snezhnaya. It's focused on story, build-up, and transition, not on stacking multiple new characters. The priority here isn't expanding the roster, it's setting the stage for what comes next. And if that's true, then everything about this patch from the summit meeting to the limited character release points toward one thing, a full narrative push into 7.0. If you take a step back and look at everything together, version 6.7 starts to feel less like a normal update and more like a turning point. This is the moment where everything shifts into 7.0, the Tsaritsa arc, the Harbingers, the bigger conflict that's been building in the background for years, and because of that, the focus changes. Instead of spreading attention across multiple new characters, the patch narrows everything down to one, Sandrone. She's not just another release to fill a banner slot, she's a Harbinger, and more importantly, she's directly tied to the story we're heading into. That makes her less of a side addition and more of the central piece of the entire patch. Once you look at it that way, the rest of the decisions start to make a lot more sense. The banner setup, for example, isn't random, it's calculated, because if Sandrone is carrying the patch alone, she needs something strong on the other side to balance it out. And that's where a rerun like Raiden Shogun fits perfectly, not just because she's popular, but because there's clear synergy being pushed, especially with superconduct setups. So now you've got a situation where players are being pulled in 2 directions. Do you invest in the new Harbinger who's clearly tied to the future story, or do you go for a proven top-tier character that already fits into strong team comps? And that's what makes 6.7 feel like a high-pressure patch. It's not just about hype, it's about forcing decisions. Compared to that, version 6.6 almost feels like the build-up phase. Multiple new characters, more flexibility, more room to spend. But then 6.7 tightens everything. One major release, one focused narrative push, and a clear setup for what comes next. From a marketing standpoint, it's exactly what you'd expect. From a story standpoint, it's even more important. Because this isn't just another update, it's the handoff into Snezhnaya, and the community is already picking up on that. The reaction so far has been mostly positive, with the usual caution around leaks this early. If this is real, we're looking at one of the biggest setup patches Genshin has ever had.